Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. My name is Bill. I'm the company's expert, and this is a very special extra episode of Honest HR Nitrous. This is called Emotional Support, and this is something a bit new for me. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a former CEO, but the nature of job search is that it's psychologically very hard on a lot of people that have to go through it. And so I just wanted to do this so that we could talk about that aspect of things. So if you are joining me today, there should be a chat box nearby. You can get in the chat and send me your thoughts and reactions, questions, that kind of thing, and we will talk about this stuff. I see that William Page is here already. William Page says, how can one deal with interview rejection despite prepping for it very hard beforehand? That's an excellent question to set us off there, William Page. Great question. I could do this without all the clutter on my screen. How about that? No, that's very, very real. Listen, the reality is that rejection is pretty much a universal thing. It affects everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how qualified you are, or how attractive you look to employers, or whatever you're trying to do. You will get rejected, and you will get rejected a lot. Okay, that's just the reality of it. And so, unfortunately, that's just a necessary component of trying for something, right? The risk of failure or temporary failure occurs whenever we try for something. So anyway, I just wanted to set this up. I will get into that in a second, but I just wanted to say, just so everybody is aware, I'm not any kind of therapist. I'm just somebody who's been around the farm a few times with this kind of stuff. And in my role as a manager throughout my career, I have had to play the role of a counselor or a therapist sometimes for subordinates of mine, peers of mine, where we talk about this stuff, especially when things are getting very, very stressful. So I'm just here to try and share some of my thoughts on that. Okay, so getting back to William Page's question, how can you deal with interview rejection? There's kind of several things in here that I'd like to present. The first aspect, kind of like I started off saying, is that just, first of all, you need to understand that you are not alone. It is not a reflection on you. I talked about that in a recent stream where we were talking about what rejection is. And rejection, it can sometimes feel like it's a statement about our self-worth, our value, our prospects in life. Like it can feel like that in the moment, but that's not actually what it is. What has actually transpired is that someone is assessing your suitability against a set of criteria that they have determined that they happen to be looking for. Okay, that's what's actually going on here. And the most obvious reason for rejection is that when 1,000 people apply for a job, let's say 500 of those people are fully qualified for the job. Like they could do the job if they were given the offer. They wouldn't have any issues doing the job. But the reality is that there's one job and there's 500 qualified applicants. 499 of them are going to go with no. And a lot of times it's just a random process, pretty much. It turns into an eeny, meeny, miny, mo kind of situation when they choose, certainly between the last several candidates, the ones that are interviewed. It's just, it boils, if it isn't completely random, it boils down to very superficial things like who applied first, right? Or other more perhaps sinister criteria, like, who was the tallest, or who do I get along with the best? Things like this. So as you can appreciate, that's not any kind of reflection on you. And the great thing to remember that can hopefully help is that some of the criteria they're weighing you against can be pretty shady. Like, for example, if you're not gullible, maybe they're looking to a certain degree, for someone who's gullible. They can pull the wool over their eyes, someone that they can exploit, essentially. And I mean, this happens all the time, and they looked at you and they thought, nah, we're not going to be able to do that with this person, right? I mean, I've been on the other side of this, and, I hate to say it, but from a certain perspective, you can look at it like they're wanting the person that they choose to be able to drink the Kool-Aid to a degree. Okay? If it's someone who questions things, that can be a very good trait to have. But if you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to be questioned and wants to be sort of obeyed without question and doesn't want any of their decisions to be questioned, they're going to choose someone who's essentially a sheep or comes across as a sheep. And maybe you didn't have that requirement. Is that a bad thing? I'd say no. I'd say ultimately it's a good thing. It's a testament about you. Sometimes they want people they can order around, even if it comes to like ethical gray areas, and they don't want somebody that's particularly forthright or righteous. They want someone that's very easily led and a bit ignorant and ditzy and out of things. And that maybe wasn't you. You know what I'm saying? So the criteria that they use to assess you, that isn't anything necessarily to feel bad about falling short of, right? So that's definitely an aspect of it. When it comes to what to do about it, here's where I mean, I think everyone will have their own answer. I can give you what I have done and what I would recommend people just to deal with the sort of sting of it in the moment. And this became so routine for me once upon a time in my life that I actually wrote it down as a checklist because I found myself having to deal with this stuff on a regular basis. And for the benefit of you guys, I sort of dug out that checklist. I actually located it and brought it out. So this is a summary of what I'd had there. Okay, where is it? Okay, this is, now keep in mind, this is just trying to deal with the emotion on the day of, right? So, to avoid yourself jumping off a cliff or something. This is what I'd written. Dealing with kind of this stuff. First of all, go put on a sweater or some kind of warm clothing, because where I am in the world, it can get cold in the climate where I am. So, you will feel better if you are physically warm. Psychologically, you won't feel quite as bad. Talk about it. The tendency is to just curl up in a ball and keep your thoughts to yourself and not engage with anyone, not talk about it with anyone. I've been very fortunate. I've been happily married for a very long time. And so I found that just talking about it with my wife was something that really, really helped. Other things, going and forcing yourself to have a bath or something, or a shower, or whatever you're into, that I found for myself, that really helped in the moment. You don't feel quite as pessimistic and possibly suicidal. Go do whatever your hobby is, whatever your entertainment is. You will not feel like doing anything fun at that moment. You will just feel like wallowing in this negativity. Force yourself to go watch your favorite TV show or read your favorite book or something like that. Like whatever it is that you do that, you enjoy. Artificially force yourself to do it. If you can do that, if that's possible, it will help you to feel better about things in that moment. Same with if you listen to music, put on your favorite music, whatever. And I know this sounds silly now that I'm 1,000,000 pounds, but if you can, go have some food that you like, that also. We can't control our feelings. All we can control is our actions. And if we can do actions that lead to us artificially feeling better, that can help. That's what I found. Excellent. Other people are here. Thank you for joining me today. Suman, how do you say this? Rayo? Sumen3 Rayo says, hi there. Thank you so much. You're absolutely welcome. And I apologize for bastardizing your name. I'd applied from 2020, but only had interviews from 2022 to date. And what I found odd, I had rejections from 2022 for teaching jobs in various countries. Yeah, that's a tough break. In 2020, obviously some global events kind of disrupted things, shall we say. And it was an interesting time. You go on. I am a level 1 educator employed by the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. Okay. Yeah, like this is the thing. I think when a lot of people are young, and when they're not experienced with this stuff themselves, they haven't had a lot of experience applying for jobs and being rejected from it. I really get the impression the world over that people are ill prepared for this process. Your expectations, either people don't tell you how this is going to go really, or they almost feed you misinformation. I don't know if it's direct or it's indirect, but people get this impression that, I have whatever. I have an education, I have experience, I have skills, whatever it is. Therefore, it should be easy for me to get a job. The first job I apply to, they will hire me on the spot. Or if not, then the second job, they'll hire me on the spot. And the problem is that if you have those expectations, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you're the most brilliant person ever, you will probably be disillusioned and disappointed because it's really probably not going to turn out like that. And it's because of what I said earlier, at least in my experience, in my opinion, it's because people have very specific needs. They're not necessarily looking for, first of all, the most qualified person. That might be where the false assumptions start. I'm fully qualified, therefore they should pick me. The reality is that they're looking for other things. Sometimes they're looking for intelligent other things, and sometimes they're looking for completely insane other things. And so that's the first problem. The next problem is that the way they assess people, like how they assess someone to say, do you have that thing, is usually completely inaccurate. So you could actually have what they're looking for, but because of the process most people use and our failings as human beings, we do a terrible job of being able to detect the things that we're actually wanting. That's the other problem. I regularly talk about that. That's, this is a highly inaccurate process. So, that can be the failing. You could be perfectly qualified. You could be a good candidate, but because they go through a really, really imperfect process to kind of assess you, they falsely conclude that you don't have what they're looking for. That's another issue, So all of this really boils down to, it's a question of random chance. I know that sounds strange, and it's going to sound strange to some people, but here's where I'm coming from. If you study, say, something like finance, like finance is where they do investments and all this kind of stuff. Now, how do you predict investments? Like you invest in something and then you hope it pays off, right? Well, you can't predict what's going to happen because the world is insanely complicated. And, so what they do is they reduce everything to a statistical probability. They just say, well, it has a 20% chance of working out this year or something like that, right? And then if it doesn't work out this year, you try again next year, and then you have another 20% chance of it working out. And then if it keeps going year after year, eventually it's a statistical likelihood that almost certainty that it will work out. It's just a question of when, right? So that's what they do when they study investments, like this study of risk and return. So it's very similar with job search. If you're applying to all these jobs and you have a certain little chance of it working out for each one, right? Obviously, the more jobs you apply to, that will increase your odds, your likelihood of one of them working out, right? It will increase the likelihood of something working out sooner, right? But then also the quality of the effort, like the application. So if you're sending out applications and the only thing you're doing to find a job is you're talking to recruiters or something, and you're applying for posted jobs, and you're sending out like a template resume. You're not customizing your resume for every job. You're just like, here, here's my resume. So you can apply for a lot of jobs by doing that because it's not very labor intensive, but the quality of your application is kind of low. You would have had a much better likelihood of them calling you back if you had customized your application in some way. So you tailor your resume and you write them a custom cover letter addressing the things that they said that were important to them, things like this, right? So that would be a quality approach. So having a quality approach will increase your likelihood of, getting a job. Having a quantity approach will also increase the likelihood that something's going to work out, right? And then obviously, if you can find a way to do both, that would be even better, right? You do a larger number of customized, tailored applications that you really put time into and try and, give yourself the best chance, right? That's why today, right now, people are embracing a lot of AI tools like ChatGPT because they can allow you to do that. They can allow you to customize things in a very efficient way, so you can do a lot of applications that are all customized, right? So that's kind of one element of what's going on and how you can do it. Right? So like if it's taking you like over a year, or it took you, in your case, a couple of years to get some bites, right, from all these jobs you're applying for. I mean, I don't know your situation, but that could have been one of the factors, definitely. Right? The other thing is where you look, right? There's more than one way to get a job, and this is something that maybe if you're having trouble getting hired or finding something, it's a real opportunity for learning. This is like, to try and look on the bright side here. This is one of the great things about those moments in life where it's like a slap in the face, where we question, like, what I thought I was doing the right thing, but I'm not getting the results that are consistent with doing the right thing. And up until that point, you were completely convinced that the approach you were taking was the right one. Like, you had no doubt in your mind, this is what you do, so I'm doing it. But when you get to that point where it's like, it stings and there's all these emotions involved because it's not working out. I know from experience for myself that one of the good things, that there's precious little good things about being in that situation, but one of them is that we finally question things that we weren't questioning up to that point. We say, wait a minute, is this really the right way to do this? And then perhaps you start opening your mind to like, okay, maybe there's other things that I should be doing instead. Or maybe I should be doing this in a different way, a way that I was closed to before, right? For example, I know that for some people, customizing their resume is one of those things where, they, especially if you've gone to someone that you've paid to write yourself like a perfect resume. You paid them a lot of money and they spent a lot of time with you, and they came up with this like crafted, like perfect resume. Every word on it was the exact right word that was accurate, but it portrayed you in the best possible light. It was a work of art, right? And then someone turns around and says, well, you need to be customizing your resume for every job. And you're like, I don't want to touch this. No, absolutely not. That's the whole point of paying an expert to make myself like this amazing resume. I'm not going to customize it. And then you might apply for 2,000 jobs or something, and then you don't get a single call back, right? And then it maybe comes to a head where you say this is clearly not working. I don't understand. I thought I was doing the right thing. And then it causes you to question, okay, maybe I should be customizing this. The ego is a very powerful thing, Lysolana, is that how you say that? Lysolana Lorwin, I recognize that name, says, I have a large 4-year job gap in my resume. Should I put some fictitious jobs or fictitious small-time retail business in my resume? If not, what should I do? I feel like I'm not employable anymore. Okay, let's unpack this. First of all, Lysolana, you are employable. You know how I know this? A couple of things. Number one, first of all, you're here, okay? You are capable enough to recognize the problem, to seek out help, and, you're going to the right places. Secondly, what little I know about you is that you can at least string a couple of sentences together in a very coherent way. That's more than a lot of people can do, okay? So, just looking at the way you've written that little tiny paragraph there, that's better than a lot of people. So, there's absolutely no question in my mind. You're absolutely employable. Everybody's employable. You are employable. I can tell right off the bat. Okay, so it's a shame that you're being convinced otherwise. Okay, because that's not true. Now, let's go back to what you were saying here. Okay, you've got a 4-year gap in your resume. Now, obviously, that signals that I don't know what you've been doing in those 4 years. I'm assuming that you've been trying to find jobs in those 4 years. Okay, so it's like a 4-year effort. And if that's true, then that would signal that what you're doing is probably not the best approach and you need to change something. You need to fundamentally change something, okay? Now, getting to your question, should you put fictitious jobs? Now, listen, I'm not going to get on my high horse here like a lot of people and say absolutely not, integrity is everything. Look, if you're desperate for a job, there's a point where that stuff, let's be honest, it goes out the window. Okay, you need to get something. I get it, okay? But this is what I would say. There's many things that you should try before you get to that extreme contingency when you're going to fabricate a bunch of stuff on your resume. Okay? That's what I would say. Now, the obvious question to me is, what have you been doing? And have you been trying more than one method of getting a job? Because there are many methods of getting a job, and most of them don't involve applying for posted jobs. Okay? Usually the way it goes is that most people, they are aware at least that in order to get a job, you need to find posted jobs. These days it's online. It used to be the classified ads in the newspapers. That's where people the help wanted, classified ads, looking for this person. And companies would take out ads in the local newspapers, right? Print media. That's been largely replaced by online job ads. But just like the print media, it's a subset of all the jobs that are out there. Only something like 20% of all jobs that are out there are posted. That means 80% or so of the jobs that actually exist, you can't see them by doing an online search. Okay, so that would be step one would be to realize this, okay? Now, what most people do is you don't want to completely ignore posted jobs. Okay, so everyone should be looking at posted jobs to some degree. But in addition to that, what you really want to do to be successful is investigate other methods of getting a job, especially the ones that target the hidden jobs, the ones that are not posted, okay? Okay, I could go off on a whole lecture about how that stuff works, right now, but that's kind of not what I'm here to do today. All I would say is look, if you're hearing this and you're thinking okay, that's unrealistic for me, I can't do that kind of thing. It doesn't make sense, or you think, surely that's not true. Okay, like you could be thinking any or all of those. Okay, here's what I recommend. Don't take my word for anything. I recommend that everybody learns how the world works, learns what's actually going on. Now, if you do your own investigation into this stuff, you will find that it is true, okay? Don't take someone's word off the internet. Go and research this stuff for yourself and get your information from a variety of sources. And the best way of learning anything is to have done it with your own. You've seen it with your own eyes. You've done it with your own hands. No one can tell you, oh, that's false, because you've lived it, you've seen it, you've done it, right? So that's what I'd recommend. Now, if you really don't know where to start, and you're sort of not into this, here's what I would say. Maybe you've done this, maybe you haven't, but in this live stream, the description box that's usually right under the video feed, in the description box of this live stream, I've put links to several things, and one of them, under the heading resources, is a video I've done on my channel called How Successful People Get Jobs. Go and watch the video. It might not be the most action-packed video you've ever seen, but that information hopefully gives you an idea of the stuff you can do. So my thing would be like, have you done that kind of activity? And if the answer is no, then this is your homework. Learn about that. Learn about the hidden job market. More, if you ask the typical employee how they got hired, they're not going to say, I answered a posted job online. They're going to say, there was some kind of networking activity where maybe a former coworker of mine ended up working here, and then I reached out to them. Or I contacted the company. I contacted the manager of this department and said, like, if ever you're hiring, hire me. I can do this. Something like that, right? There's going to be some kind of networking activity. So look into that, okay? You will not regret that you did, okay? Especially if, you've got a 4-year gap and you've been trying other things and they're not really panning out fast, okay? That's what I would say. I think that the biggest problem with this stuff not working out for everyone, including myself in my career, is that our expectations are off. Our expectations of how we think everything works is off. And the more you kind of learn about what's actually going on, how things actually work, the more your expectations are brought in line with the reality, So therefore, learning is a good thing, And in this moment, we don't feel like learning, but at least it opens our mind to considering other things other than what we've been doing so far. So you can look at that as like a really good thing to come out of this perhaps very unpleasant experience. If you're here, I see there's 17 people here. Get in the chat and let me know what's up, what's going on with you. I'm not a therapist, but I've had to go through a lot of stuff, and I've had to help people with some of the stuff they're going through in a work type situation. And so I just wanted to kind of address that side of things today. I have a tendency to go into like what to do about it rather than, what can we do to manage our feelings kind of stuff. So I'm trying to see if I can step out of that today. V8 Super Special says, "Hi, Bill, your voice sounds less congested today." You're absolutely right. I'm starting to get over my flu type situation I've had for the last week. How come the large companies, 300,000 employees, yeah, that is pretty large, 300,000 plus headcount and more, have such awfully broken hiring processes? What went wrong down the line? There isn't a simple answer to that. The only simple answer would be bureaucracy, right? You see, the bigger an organization is, usually that means, all things being equal, is that every task now is broken up and done across several people. So there's more handoffs, right? So one part of the task is done by someone and they hand it off to another person, and then they hand it off to another person. And you get more handoffs the bigger the organization gets. Everyone does a more narrow sort of, focus. And every time there's a handoff, there's an opportunity to have things fall between the cracks. Either you lose information, or you lose the original goal, or you lose, quality, or, like there's a variety of reasons. So that's one reason. Another reason is that if you're super big, like we're talking like Apple, Google, Walmart, companies like this, you have you are recognized. So your brand has a lot of value. So that means that a lot of people will want to work for you just for the name recognition, right? Like if you could put Google on your resume or Amazon, you're not going to get a hiring manager going, okay, what's this Google thing? Who's that? You know what I mean? Like oh, you worked at Google, and Google's known for crushing it in certain areas. So therefore you must be good, right? Like that's the image, right? And we all know that that's not necessarily true. But what this means is that they can be even more incompetent and off-putting, and yet people will still line up around the block to want to work for them and put themselves through like this horribly tortuous, ridiculous hiring process. The other thing is that, like, the other part of that is, well, if you're hiring people and you're hiring the wrong people, or you're hiring just anyone, doesn't that mean you're going to have like bad employees? Well, the other part of that is that they can afford to hire even more people because they're so big. And then they can pick and choose more of who gets to move up and actually have an effect in the company. Who actually can make decisions and who's in charge of things, right? They have a larger pool of people to choose from. So you can have a very high employee turnover at the bottom, where they just hire people today and fire people tomorrow. They can afford to have that because those people are kind of doing the grunt work. It doesn't really matter. And then the ones that actually move up and help form the company, they're handpicked. That's the theory. I mean, we see all kinds of variation from that, but that can be some of the factors that are at play. So you've noticed that how the bigger the company, the sort of stranger the hiring practices. Yeah, like I worked, the first part of my career, I worked in big companies. Second half of my career, I worked in small companies. And it was absolute night and day. And the thing about the small companies, I actually really enjoyed working for smaller companies, because like they would hire an employee and you'd have to trust that employee, because they'd be autonomous, off doing their thing for you. And you couldn't stand over their shoulder and, keep tabs on them like they do in big companies, where they don't trust you with anything. They don't trust you're going to work when you say you're going to work, and they don't trust you can do anything right. So they're always standing over you. In small companies, you can't do that because you don't have enough people to go around. And, it requires that everybody works much more independently and do more of the process. So you have to really trust your employees more in a smaller company. At least that was my experience in the industries that I've worked in. That's what I saw. That's what all the smaller companies had. By the way, if you're looking for a job, don't ignore the smaller companies. They don't have the money to be able to publicize their job listings far and wide, but they are there and they are significant. And for example, the place where I live in Canada, in the province of Manitoba, where I live, of all the people that have jobs, 85% of them are in small companies. You wouldn't think so by looking at the place I live. It's like a typical city with skyscrapers and stuff in the downtown, and those are the most visible, the most prominent things. But where a lot of the jobs are, they're all in small businesses you've never heard of. A company with 50 employees or 100 employees, you've never heard of them. They're working in behind the scenes. Right? So make sure that you're also looking at those employers too. In some places, you get like 50-50. 50% of people work in big companies, 50 in small. It's not always like 85-15. But we have a tendency to ignore the smaller players because they're just not as visible. But they're there and they're damn important, and they provide some really, really good, high-paying jobs. Get in the chat. I see there's 20 people here. Let me know what's up with you. Let me know what you're wondering. Let me know how it's going, and I'll try and help you out. I called this episode "Emotional Support for Job Search." So I'm here to help if I can. It's kind of a new thing for me. I'm just trying it, and it's on a Friday, right? Hopefully, you can disengage from the job search stuff. It's not going to be all in your head all the time on the weekend. Hopefully you can swing that. It's important to take care of your mental health through these things. Excuse me. We can put ourselves through the ringer for short periods of time, but for a long-term kind of thing, which sometimes job search is going to be a long-term thing, you got to take care of your mental health. You really do. So hopefully you have a chance to think of something like other things during the weekend. Hopefully that's the case. May not feel like it, but hopefully you can. Let's see here. I've got several buttons here. I can do this and get rid of all the clutter. Does that look more boring or does that look more professional? Who knows? Anyway, get in the chat. Let me know what's going on. What's your situation? If you're wondering anything, let me know. Yeah, the other thing that I regularly talk about, obviously, is that, I personally have a chip on my shoulder for a lot of recruiters who treat a lot of job seekers with disrespect. Like they don't handle it properly. They don't handle it appropriately. Even when you compare it to other types of business interactions, if a customer contacts the company to ask a question or something, they'll treat that with more respect than when a job seeker contacts the company. You know what I mean? And it might even get to the point where they're actively rude to a job seeker, just in the way, in the manner of address, like the way they talk. That's quite common. That's surprisingly common. I'd say that's probably more common than getting a professional, appropriate, courteous response. That's the impression I've gotten my whole career across 5 industries. And that's been reinforced to me afterwards when I sort of got on YouTube, based on like what people like yourselves are telling me. You guys are experiencing the same thing. Alberto Garcia Navarro is here. Hi, Bill. I'm doing a PhD now. I'm 33 and never worked on my field outside academia. I'm starting an entrepreneurial path, but I really feel old and disadvantaged to address many professional challenges. Well, first of all, congratulations, Alberto. Doing a PhD is no simple, easy, straightforward thing. I myself don't have a PhD. I kind of stopped at the master's level. That was good. Now, it's like you're a specialist. Like obviously, if you got a PhD, yes, you're a specialist. But I mean, you're a specialist in the sense that like you've spent your entire professional life in academia, so you know academia well. And part of me is, I don't know if I'm jealous, but I do have an appreciation for it, because I went back to academia for a few years where I did some teaching. About 5 years ago, there was like a 5-year period where I was on YouTube and I had my consulting thing, but I also went back and did teaching kind of part-time. And it was the first time I'd been back in that environment since I was a student, like in my early 20s or something. And a couple of things were clear to me. Number one, I am not built for academia. It's just such an alien culture. And it's very, very different from working in the private sector. Even the way people's like their mannerisms, how they talk to each other. From my perspective, at least in the circles I was in, people had this really arrogant, snooty kind of, just aura about themselves, and while simultaneously almost doing things I would count as cowardly, If you got a problem with someone, you don't talk to them face to face. You kind of send an email to them, to the boss behind their back. It was like that was kind of the practices. But yet you act like, the big cheese. It was just very, very strange environment. So I really clashed with that. It wasn't my bag. So if you can navigate that world in academia, okay, this world of grants and, publications and, all this kind of stuff, currying favors with the people in charge, that's something, However, and I'm sure you know this already, it's like a little bubble. It's isolated from the real world. If you try and behave like that and conduct your affairs like that, your professional interactions like that in other industries, it's really not going to go over very well because it's so different. So you're isolated a bit. So it would be good to get out. The good thing about academia, though, is that like if you have a PhD, you have instant credibility in certain things that you can just sort of insert yourself into, like almost right at the top. Whereas everybody else has to work their way up. You've got this shortcut. You can go bang. You're an advisor. You can advise executives and things in the private sector. Whereas nobody else can do that. Certainly nobody else from, like academia, like all the students and stuff, they can't do that. They have to get a job and they have to start at the bottom. So there is that, and if you play your cards right and you interface with the private sector as I bump my stuff here, at a high level, you can make that pay off for you. But it's going to require that you adapt to their way of doing things, communication, expectations, how they interact. I think it's going to require you playing the game of the private sector a little bit. But if you can do that, you can really make this work for you. If you want to let me know what your challenge is or what your goal is that's maybe not working or something, let me know and we can get deeper into it. Kat says, what's up with American companies outsourcing to Canada to save money than being cheap as heck and then threatening to outsource to the Philippines, but claiming they value quality? Yeah, obviously that's a very general and nebulous kind of statement. The interesting thing about kind of the bamboo curtain opening up is like, in the Philippines and all this kind of stuff, and Indonesia and all those places there, is that when they started, like anything else, there's sort of a progression with these things. When they start at the bottom. So it's like a sweatshop type situation, and they're known for low quality, low price kind of thing. But over decades, the natural progression is that you go more upscale, you build up a bit, right? And they're almost, if not pretty much at the level now where the quality can be indistinguishable from traditional things like you're talking about, like the United States and Canada and stuff like that. It's not what it used to be. It's not like, oh yeah, anything that comes from certain countries is crap. It's like, yeah, it may have been like that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, but that reputation might have lingered. But when you look at the real world results now, you're probably going to find that that's not actually the case. There is some kind of shady stuff going on with contract manufacturers and stuff, but for the most part, it's really the quality differences. They've really closed that gap quite a bit in general. So it depends what we're talking about. And I'm not down with all the latest sort of economic trends. I don't care about that stuff. It doesn't affect me. So if I was covering business news regularly, then I might. V8 Super Special says, yes, I tried to downscale for a series of reasons, including post-COVID market and the fact that the market here in Central Europe is a bit different for small players. It has been pretty tough. Plus the fact that job open market is filled mostly with technical position or executive ones. You know what trumps a lot of that stuff? Like if you're going head to head with like hundreds of other people and you're all trying to compete on a level playing field, and it's about technical chops, or it's about, friends in high places, or It's about, other factors, what school you went to, and all this kind of stuff, or what education you have, or how many years experience you have. You know what trumps all of that? Generally speaking, not all the time, but generally, you know what trumps all of those things? Getting along with people. This is a human failing. A human failing is that we like people that we get along with. And when you look at a lot of hiring practices, people hire in their own image. So an introvert will hire an introvert, and an extrovert will hire an extrovert. An accountant will hire an accountant. Now, you're probably wondering, that's weird. If you want to fill an accounting job, you would hire an accountant. Of course, yeah. But, okay, you need to hire a manager to run a store, right? Now, who would make a good manager for a store? Would it be a salesperson? Would it be an accountant? Would it be an IT person? Would it be a designer, a clothing designer, or seamstress type person who can make clothes? Who would be best equipped to run the store? There is no right answer. All those people can succeed really well in that role. All those people could also be inappropriate for the role, but that stuff matters less. So the thing is, if all the store managers report to an accountant, what you see is that when it's a vice president or something, they manage all the stores. When they have to hire a store manager, and the vice president is an accountant by trade, you usually see the new store managers being all accountants. That's usually what we see. People tend to hire in their own image, and it's because they see the value in the traits and things that they themselves have more than the traits and things that they don't have, right? So an accountant will look at another accountant and think that they're, much more valuable than, say, a salesperson. Does that make sense? I mean, I could beat this to death, but hopefully everybody gets the idea, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, when you level the playing field and you put everyone on you artificially make this competition where everyone competes on only a subset of stuff that matters, right? Maybe they all take a test, an aptitude test or something. And, it's hard to win when you're given an aptitude test and you're going up against 500 other people. Are you going to beat them all hands down and be the best candidate? No, right? The odds are stacked against you. But what you can do is you can go around that. In reality, the world, it's not like this artificial standardized thing where nothing else matters. Some people try and make it into that, but it isn't. I mean, I built my career on going around these things, If you look at executives, how they get hired, they get hired because they're a known quantity to their boss. I know you, I trust you, I know that I can put you in charge and you will care and you will do a half decent job and we get along. And that's going to be very important. I do not want to hire someone I don't get along with. It'll make my life a misery. I want to hire someone I get along with. Even if that person is not technically the most accomplished person, I'd rather have them, right? This is good news. This isn't bad news that there's always people winning over you. No, this means that if you are going head to head and following the rules that they told you should do and you're not getting anywhere, it's there's very simple things you can do that will give you the edge and will make you the person they pick. There's a lot more to it than you've been led to believe, That's some of the stuff I cover on my channel, right? We're not talking about what to do. This goes into a bunch of other things. I've got resources in this video in the description box. Check those out if you're wondering what those are and how to do it. Where did I leave off here? It's for example, to give you something more concrete, V8 Super Special, okay? One meeting with the hiring manager for that can basically place you at the top of the list. despite maybe if you had gone in the front door with 500 other applicants, you would not be the top contender. You'd be somewhere down towards the bottom. Other people are more qualified. Other people are, they have more experience. Other people have better credentials, whatever. But you're the most passionate, and you showed the most initiative, and you're the most of all the people that they've met, which is maybe 2 of the 500, you're the most likable. Because when you went there, you met the person, you did not talk all about you. You'd simply ask them questions about them. Like this very basic stuff, There's all kinds of these, right? And that's how you can win, despite any handicap. And you can win because most people, or certainly most people at the lower levels, are not paying attention to any of this. Okay, so there's a lot of things you can do V8 that will really help. Okay, but you have to be open to changing your method. Okay, it feels very weird. It feels very uncomfortable. But this is the learning process. You'll be out of your comfort zone a little, and that's scary. And that's probably the last thing you feel like doing at this moment. That's why we got to take a break. If you can go through the weekend without stressing out about, hopefully as much as physically possible, without stressing out about this, and just try and disengage. Take care of your mental health, and then come back and just be open to trying stuff. You don't have to abandon what you're doing. You do what you're doing, but then you tack on this. You tack on some of these other techniques. Okay? And I think that's a reasonable thing to expect, especially when you can do it at your own pace. Gerard says, V8 says, plus the fact that the open job market is filled mostly with technical positions. Yeah, that doesn't matter. You can outmaneuver all those people. You don't need to get every job. You just need one, and you can get it by changing the game. It's not about your resume anymore. It's not about how qualified you are, how many years of experience. It's about the fact that you're the only one that showed up, and now they know you, and they liked you. And that's very easy to achieve for everyone if you know what to do. So look into it. But you're going to be fine, Gerard says, not having much luck, overqualified or underqualified, there seems to be no sweet spot. I've been in a full-time caregiver for 10 years. Overqualified is a bullshit term. Just so you know, Gerald, if I'm saying that right, I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Overqualified is a bullshit term. There's no such thing as being overqualified. For example, let's pretend you're a rich person and you own a big house and you need to hire someone to water your plants while you're on vacation, okay? And 2 people apply for the job. Person A is a high school student. They're 18 years old or something, and they want to water your plants for minimum wage. The other person is Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein shows up and applies for the job to water your plants. So you have to decide which one you want to hire. Now, are you going to look at Albert Einstein and say, I'm sorry, I don't think you're the right person to water my plants because you're overqualified? It's pretty clear that you can do more than just watering plants, so I'm not going to hire you for this. Now, in the real world, does that make any sense? Of course not. The only reason overqualified is a thing is because they're making an assumption about you based on stereotypes. They're making the assumption that, you're not serious about working here because, in theory, we think that you could get a better paying job somewhere else, in theory. So therefore, we're not going to consider you for this job, even though the things that make you overqualified would actually even actively help you to outperform in this job. You're more diligent, you're more focused, you care more about what you're doing, and you're more efficient. You know what I mean? It's such a bullshit thing. And the only thing that's propagating this is recruiters, because recruiters are given the task of filling a job with someone that they fill for the lowest possible amount of money. And in order to, in theory, do that, you would never employ anyone who has capabilities over and above the simple job that they're doing, right? That's all in theory. Like, there's huge problems with that for a start. The second thing is that, would you even want to do that? Like, if you're only employing people that, can only barely manage the job that they're doing and no more, would you ever promote anyone? By definition, then promoting them into like a supervisory thing or a manager type thing, they wouldn't be able to handle it because they're not overqualified. They're at the limit of their qualification as it is. That's another whole debate, right? So whichever way you slice it, it's such a bullshit thing. Okay, so overqualified is usually used as an excuse, as a kiss off for the real reason that they rejected you. Okay, and they're not going to disclose the real reason, right? And it could be something as benign as saying, well, we got 9 qualified candidates for one job. 8 of them have to go home, and 5 of the 8 are hitting me up as the recruiter for the reason why they were rejected. And I don't want to tell them. It's like, well, it was just what we did is we rolled a dice and your name didn't come up, because that would make me look bad. It would make us look like a bunch of idiots. So I'm going to give a seemingly, valid, answer that can't come back to me in any way and portray me as bad in any way. So I'm going to say, oh, I'm sorry, we've decided you were overqualified. It's such a bullshit. If they really felt that, they wouldn't be looking at you in the first place. So sorry for that tirade, but that's what's going on when they use that term. And I challenge anyone out there who's using that term. They're lying. That's not the real reason. The real reason is something else. It's also a term that if anyone's going to use it, it's a person that doesn't think you can improve, right? The best companies are looking for people that can do more than their job and want to move up. That's just the reality. Okay, I'm falling behind in this stream. Thank you for participating. You guys are awesome. There's 19 people. I will get to all your comments. Let's see here. Where was I? Cat, more threatening established traded workers with the idea of starting fresh in a country they haven't any roots in. All for cutting costs but claiming values. Listen, we're getting into this is the problem with talking about this stuff. It's very politically charged, and I steer away from that stuff on here. Besides, I'm not an economist, so I'd be really giving you an amateur opinion on this kind of stuff, so I'm not going to engage with that. But learn about it. Economics is very, very complicated, and that's all I'll say. Alberto says, actually, it's very encouraging what you say about playing the expert card, because people sometimes see it as just an overqualified title. One of my fears looking for jobs after graduating. Yeah, it's such a fine line, isn't it, between having confidence and saying, look, I can do this for you. I'm good at this. This is what I can provide. This is the value I can provide. This is what I can offer, right? It's such a fine line between sort of selling yourself and explaining your value. Between that and flipping over into being arrogant, or being perceived as arrogant. Right? It's such a fine line, and you will not get it right with everyone, because everyone's got their own opinion of oh, you told me your capabilities. How arrogant is that? It's like, what? You know what I mean? This is one of the things you learn by experience. The more job interviews you go to, the more experiences you have interviewing and then seeing the outcome and interviewing for different types of people. The more you get a feel for how you should present yourself and how far you can go where you represent yourself really well, but you're not being perceived as too pushy or too arrogant or anything like that. Right? So, yeah, and no one's going to get it right. Even experts at this that have done this their whole lives, like people that have been salespeople or something their whole lives, they still get it wrong occasionally, right? And by occasionally, I mean maybe 50% of the time, because they're always dealing with new people. V8 Super Special. It does make sense, yes, and it fits with the fact that my skill set and experiences are a bit more unusual for the market I'm in. Yeah, you know what? I'm a big fan of unusual. This is the problem. We were talking earlier. Somebody asked me a question earlier in the feed about like big companies and why do they do this? Like, that's another thing. They're looking for the most mundane sheep. You know what I mean? Like if you look at what they're actually looking for, and if you go in there with anything sort of that deviates from their preconceived notions of what a perfect employee would be, does it count in your favor? No, they regard it as weird and extraneous. It's like, we don't need those extra skills. Therefore, it's watering down the skills that you have. It's just stupid. I mean, I've always liked people that, are just, they have like some weird hobby or weird kind of way of working, that isn't absolutely 100% typical. You know what I mean? I think it's good. It brings something. And it gives you an edge for, especially people that combine things. I got this weird combination of like, I know this and I know this, and you never see that combination. And that gives them some unique insights, unique abilities. They can problem solve and outperform everybody else because they've like seen two different things. I have a bit of that, so I know how valuable that can be. But that's not valued, at least when you go through standard channels to get a job. So that's why you sometimes have to suppress and, not advertise that stuff for the sake of giving them what they want. It's not about like what you are. It's about like, do you have what they happen to be looking for? And if the answer is yes, then just focus on that and don't give them a bunch of things that they're not looking for. But I agree with you. Okay, where did I leave off here? This feed keeps moving on me. This is a very bad design. I'm using Streamlabs OBS. Okay, I think I was here. Alberto says, the challenge I face, how to sell myself as that figure, how to sell my value in front of other bigger players, since I'm going for the startup path, and gain credibility in front of potential investors. Okay, well, here's the deal, Alberto. This is like basic kind of sales theory, right? This is how networking works, is that, like I just kind of said, if you go for a job, let's say you have 10 accomplishments, right? There's 10 like things on your resume that are like a big deal, right? And you apply for a job where they said, we're looking for 3 things. Now you happen to have those 3 things, okay? They're 3 of the 10 of the things on your resume, okay? When you go down to the interview, do you talk about things 7, like 4 through 10? Do you talk all about those? No, you don't mention those because they don't care about those. Because the only thing they care about is things 1, 2, and 3. So when you go down, if you're trying to make yourself look good in their eyes, you talk all about how you have 1, 2, and 3, and all the ways you can use 1, 2, and 3, and how important 1, 2, and 3 are, and how you believe that it's if you're going to do this job, you need to have things 1, 2, and 3. That's what you talk about because that's what they're going to be receptive to, right? Now you talk to a bunch of investors, and they're looking for things 8, 9, and 10, right? Okay, you've got all 10 on your resume, but do you talk about things 1 through 7? No. You talk about things 8 through 10. You speak to what they're looking for, right? So you adapt to whoever it is that you're trying to sell to, right? So your story, your pitch is going to change depending on the context, depending on who you're talking to and what they happen to be looking for, right? That's what you're going to speak to. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, it's partly laziness and it's partly ego. And I'm not immune to that either. But they don't want to change. They want to go in there and they want to talk about things 1 through 10 to everyone, regardless of who they're talking to, because they're proud of it. And if you're not interested in, some of these things, then you should be. Like that's what they believe. So, but Okay, that's great. You're sort of catering to yourself, but what you don't realize is that you're not catering to the person you're presenting to, right? They only care about a couple of those. That's what they want to hear. And anytime you talk about something outside of that, their eyes glaze over and they tune out, and they regard it as a disadvantage. And that's where they start using words like overqualified, right? Okay, so you're going to have to adapt. Hopefully, I mean, you may have already figured this out, but that's kind of like a major component of doing this. Gerard says, yes, I never even get an interview most times, even though the resume shows that I've done all the requirements in other jobs. And on the other side, it becomes you don't have this experience. Yeah, I know. It feels contradictory, doesn't it? You know? Either you're told things like, "Oh, you're not qualified," and then or then when you are qualified, they say, "I'm sorry, you're overqualified." It's like, well, you know, this is like a no-win situation. It's because that information they're giving you is not accurate. That's not actually what's going on here. They've rejected you for a different reason, right? It could be something absolutely benign, like there's one job and 500 applicants. You're one of the 499 that they had no choice but to give a no to. If they were hiring 10 positions, they were hiring 10 of, there were 10 vacancies, and of the 500 applicants, they were going to hire 10 of them. They would have been happy to hire you, but because there was only one, they couldn't, right? So, but will they say that? They'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, someone got in there first." No, they'll say, "I'm sorry, you're overqualified," or something retarded like that. You know, and it's just misinformation. It's just to cover their butt so that no one can come back to them and accuse them of being negligent or biased, or, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So one of the reasons why things don't make sense is because either you're missing some information, or the information you've given, some of it has been false, or all of it, right? But you notice how things don't align. That's because this is what's actually going on, right? Okay, so anyway, the takeaway is that this is good news. It's good news. It's not as impossible as it seems, okay? And there's a lot of things you can do. WYBT says, what can substitute pre-sale experience if I'm competing against experienced sales engineer in cybersecurity? How to stand out and get selected over the other? Oh, there's a classic case of like if they meet you and you're awesome, you click with them, right? And by the way, this does not depend on any natural traits or abilities. It simply is based on how you interact with them. And that is just like how to do a job interview. It's like a method that's taught. And like I said earlier, I can't get into all that, like how to do all these very specific things in this live stream, but like in 30 seconds. But to illustrate, it's like if you have the most charismatic person in the world, who's the most experienced salesperson in the world, and they go and they meet the hiring manager, and they make chit chat with the hiring manager, usually at the beginning of the meeting or whatever, or interview or whatever the exchange is, and they talk all about themselves for half an hour. Like the candidate talks all about themselves. You know, yeah, you're a great salesperson. You've got a lot of experience. You know, you might look fantastic. You might sound fantastic. You got the gift of gab, but you got it wrong. You know, whereas another person goes there, they don't look perfect. They don't have this glowing resume with all these accomplishments and all this experience on it and fancy education. But they go down there and they know their stuff when it comes to this product or whatever it is. And they go down, they talk to the hiring manager, and they listen. And they ask the hiring manager questions about things that the hiring manager enjoys talking about. What do we all enjoy talking about? Ourselves. So if someone asks you, like, how do you do your job? Or like, what's the most challenging part of your job? Or where do you think this job is going to, how is it going to evolve in the future? something that they enjoy talking about, they know quite a bit about, and it involves them, they'll talk your ear off all about it. And then, you say literally nothing, and then they conclude at the end of it, like, wow, I really like you. You know what I mean? Like, it's silly things like this. Like, it's stupid little things like that can give you the edge. And they'll hire you over the super good looking, super accomplished salesperson that just didn't read the situation right, or didn't even show up to do this optional meeting that you arranged. You know what I mean? If you're applying for an internship or something like that, like a lot of people just apply. It's like, go a step further and say, go to the building on the university that you're already in and go and see the professor in their office, the one that's like approving the, selecting just have a conversation. Just ask them I'm just here to ask about the internship. How does it work? What, like this kind of stuff. And I mean, you're signaling your interest. They like you. I mean, who would you pick? You'd want to pick that person. They're the only one that showed up. They seemed they were interested, things like this. That's how you go around these stupid official bureaucratic policies, and you can be selected. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but that's one thing that's there if you have never tried it. There's a lot of hope, It just means you have to step out of yourself and learn things that no one told you about maybe to this point. I have to wrap this up very soon, so I'm going to try and get through these because I've got like a thing in 15 minutes. Rao Sumen3 Rao says, if by some miracle some good news comes before the year ends or in January, I'm so going to celebrate. I can finally resign out from the department. I just want to teach and immigrate. I wish you every luck. I wish you every luck, Rao. For the, I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about South Africa. I'm sorry. I know the capital's Pretoria. I know that you've got a couple of island countries in there, and there's the Boer War and stuff. But I don't know much about it. I don't know if there's Christmas or holiday celebrations. A lot of people, they put their job search on hold during the end, the December holidays, if that's a thing, down there. But that can give you an edge if you're the one that's actually pursuing stuff and contacting people through that. There's also opportunities at the end of the year because that's when people are retiring and, things like this. So, don't let up. Take the weekend off if you can to just sort of, rebuild your mental health as much as possible, and then keep going through in a controlled sort of way, and hopefully it'll work out. If not, come back and we can talk about it some more. V8 says, to give more context, I worked as a sous chef, so accustomed to work under the high pressure of a pro kitchen, which is akin to being in the army, which gives me, I've seen the Gordon Ramsay stuff, where you just yell obscenities into everybody's face constantly. I don't know how, similar that is to reality, but it's interesting. Which gives me a very low tolerance for any BS. Oh, okay. I thought it would have given you a very high tolerance for taking abuse. Because, I mean, if someone looks at you the wrong way or just says something bad to you in any way, if you snap like a twig and beat them to death or something, I don't think you can make it. Just from the impressions I've been given, but that's just me. And makes me dry, curt, and practical, which ain't qualities that the corporate world likes. Actually, in a lot of circles, they do like that. They don't like bullshit. When it matters, these are people that have to deliver results. They care about results. Yes, if you're in government or you're in certain sort of things, yes, they care about, they're just process-driven people that, are just in a bubble of their own. But in the private sector, a lot of people respect results, and they respect practical people that can just get things done. It does mean, however, that you do have to understand things like public relations. Think of the way I'm talking right now. I'm using some colorful language and acting more and more like a sort of just a dude as opposed to an executive. I couldn't get away with talking like this if I was, in a vice president job or a CEO job. You just couldn't, right? So there is that element, but at the end of the day, you do have to be practical, and they do value that stuff, Now, if it just means that you have to polish your image, you have to learn a bit of etiquette, learn a bit of protocol, but underneath, you're the same person that doesn't suffer fools gladly and doesn't like their time being wasted. They want to just get down to business and get something done properly. If that's you, those are some great qualities. Don't let anybody convince you that, you can never make it in, what did you say, in the corporate world? It's like, no. Just that you just got to tweak the image a tiny bit and they will love you. Jessica, sorry, I want to say one more thing. I mean, I would like to hire someone like that. The only concern would be is that if you're a no-nonsense person to the point where when I talk to you, if the conversation turns at any moment to something you consider, not valid or a waste of time, or you're not interested in that, but then you bite my head off, I'm not interested in that. But, so you can take it too far, but so you're personable, but yet you're practical and you're down to business, right? There's a magic sort of combination that will allow you to shine. So I encourage you, go and find out what that is. Go and talk to a lot of people. Go see how they talk. Go and see how they conduct themselves. How much of it is pleasantries and how much of it is, let's talk turkey here. Go and imitate them and try it and see if that gets you further. V8 Super Special says, did I read that? This moved on me again. Jessica says, when the right time to give over your letters of recommendation. What? Sorry, you need to clarify that. Are you asking, if you're hitting somebody up for a letter of recommendation, when to do it? Is that what you're asking? Put it this way, anyone you've ever worked for, anyone you've ever worked with, you can go to them and get two things. You can get a reference and you can get some kind of recommendation. Okay? Now, I would actively encourage you to do that. Okay? The other thing you can also get from them is networking opportunities. Do they know anyone that could possibly, help you in any way? You know what I mean? Normally, they wouldn't really be interested in talking to you, but, you were recommended to contact me by this person I know. Okay, I'll sure, yeah. Let's see what you got. Right? You can get those three things from any person at any time. So keep that in mind as you get a job, as you leave a job. Get those things, as much of them as you can, from as many people as you can. Usually everybody that you got along with, that you like, that you feel is, has some kind of validity, you can hit them up for those three things, right? And you remember that your whole career. Okay, so you clarify, when is the right time to give the letters of recommendation that I have to a hiring company? Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Whenever, presumably they will ask for them. Some companies ask for them, some companies don't. And presumably you give the letters to them when they ask for it. So if you're talking about as a standard process, usually you don't give those at the beginning. You only give them at the end. And my preference would be to hold off for as long as possible, right? Because you only want to be doing that stuff if they're serious about hiring you, okay? If you're giving references, you don't want them contacting your references for the 1,000 jobs you've applied for this month, right? Obviously, you only want them to start contacting references and checking out your letters of recommendation if you're in the final three and it's really looking like there's a good chance they might hire you. That's the time when you want. So I would delay it as much as possible in the process to hand that stuff over. I would not give that out in the initial application. I would not give that out to the recruiter before they've extended an offer unless they've asked specifically for that stuff. Let's see here. Alberto says, thanks. You're absolutely welcome, Alberto. WYBT says, sir, you have just saved me time and effort. You identified the gap that I've been trying to identify for a really long time. Well, that's great to hear. I wish you every luck. And if you want me to do more of these, let me know. And I do a lot of live streams anyway on this channel, so come back and let's talk more if you have other questions. Jessica says, when is the right time? Okay, got that. V8 Super Special. Thanks for the encouragement, Bill, but the polder model is unfortunately pretty strong. What the hell is a polder model? Hold on, let me just look that up in real time, because, I'm that technologically proficient as my keyboard slides around. Polder model. It's Dutch. It's a method of consensus decision-making. Oh, okay, so like groupthink, basically. That's another term for it, I believe. Consensus-based decision-making, cultural classic in Netherlands, yeah. I don't like the sound of that, consensus-based. Now, there's a time and place for making decisions built on consensus. It's like a sort of very conservative thing of playing it safe when it's very high stakes. But the problem with that is that there's a lot of sociological disadvantages if your organization operates like that. It's called groupthink, where it's just everyone thinks the same, and you don't get dissenting voices, and you don't get minority opinions. And that's a recipe for disaster, to be honest with you, in the long term. In the short term, it may not be, but in the long term, that can lead to disaster. So you're saying, what was it? Oh, this thing keeps moving. Okay, the polder model is unfortunately pretty strong. Yeah, but that's why you go around it. You go around this crap, or if this game is stacked against you, you go play a different game with different people, right? You look in different places, and you further your cause with different methods, right? You change the game. There's a lot of stuff out in the world. There's a lot of opportunities to either get a job or to make money in other ways, right? And there are so I've worked in five different industries. Okay, I haven't stayed in one place. It is possible to move between industries. They're radically different. There's opportunities around you that are amazing opportunities of which you are ignorant right now. They're there. They're right under your nose, but you can't see them. Okay? There are companies around you that are hiring. There are companies that are wanting to work with contractors and, this kind of stuff. They're all around you. But you're here and they're there, and there's no connection between you two, right? So you change the game and you discover some of those and you play those games, and some will be stacked against you, but others will be stacked in your favor. And those are the ones where you win. You don't necessarily win by beating your head against a wall. You know what I mean? V8 says, much like Yanti law, decision by consensus. Yeah, decision by consensus. Yeah, there's a lot of terms. This is business and management. There's a lot, so many terms for the same stuff. WYBT says, do I offer one-on-one sessions? No, I don't. Unfortunately don't. I do it to businesses as part of my consulting thing, but not to individuals. Listen, if you're interested in something, let me know. Make me an offer, and maybe I can maybe make an exception or something. You can get my email address through the YouTube channel. And then I've got to take this, and I have to run because I've got a thing in 3 minutes. Lysolana Lorwin says, should I add references in my resume? I watched some YouTube videos about it saying that it's not good. Listen, there is no right and wrong answer for a lot of those questions. Some people will say, absolutely not. Other people will say, no, I demand that you better have references in there if you want me to hire you. There's no universal right or wrong answer. Generally speaking, I would say no. Don't put references in your resume. Okay, there might be some privacy or confidentiality issues there because you're using your resume to, like, you're publishing it far and wide, you're sending it to all these people. You don't know what they're doing with it. So if you've got names and phone numbers and stuff like that, it might be bad, and for a variety of reasons. So I would wait until they respond, maybe bring you in for an interview, and then say, we would like references now. And at that point, it's fine. They're committing, they're going deeper with you, so you can go a little bit deeper with them. That's fine. Sometimes they will ask for it right off the bat. They'll say, send your application, which includes your resume and a cover letter and your references. Now, if they do that, you can then make a decision if you're comfortable sending them references at that point. Some people are, some people aren't, right? But I wouldn't just put it on your resume if, it was me. Okay? So that's my deal. Sorry, guys, I have to get rolling. I have something. But thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. Listen, just to wrap this up, I want to say this process wreaks havoc on your mental health. In the moment where you're dealing with this stuff, it feels like everything's pessimistic and black and there's no hope. That's how it might feel. That's an illusion. Okay? Not to sound like an idiot, but the sun comes out. You just got to give it a little bit of time. But one good thing that can come out of this is that it maybe gets your attention and it causes you to switch up what you're doing. And in so doing, you're stretching yourself, you're learning, you're trying new things. That's a good thing. There's hope for this stuff. Everybody I've talked to today, you guys, just by hearing how you can communicate, you've got a lot of value. So don't worry, it's going to work out. I will be back next week. Come back and let me know if you have more questions. Other than that, take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.